maximize the benefits of trade, each country specializes in the goods that it produces at the lowest opportunity cost. Countries differ not only in their availability of labor and capital, but also in the qualities of these resources. This makes each nation quite competitive globally in producing goods that require skilled labor and technology-advanced capital. In the United States, export of goods and services amounted to 13% of GDP in 2010. Although a small share compared to most other countries, exports play a growing role in the U.S. economy. Americans spend more on imports than foreigners spend on U.S. exports. U.S. imports of goods and services were 16% relative to GDP in 2010. One way the government can put foreign producers at a disadvantage is to impose a tariff on imports. A tariff is a tax on imports. The tariff reduces the quantity of imports supplied. A quota is a legal limit on the amount of a particular commodity that can be imported. By limiting imports, a quota reduces the supply in the U.S. market, which raises the U.S. price above the world price. Trade restrictions raise a number of problems beyond the higher prices. The biggest one is that other countries often respond with trade restrictions of their own, thus shrinking the gains from trade. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade is an international tariff reduction treaty adopted in 1947 and resulted in a series of negotiated rounds aimed at freer trade. U.S. balance of payments is a record of all economic transactions between U.S. residents and residents of the rest of the world, because it reflects all the transactions that occurred during a particular period, usually a year. The balance of payments is a flow measure. The current account keeps track of trade in goods and services, the flow of interest and profits across international borders, and the flow of foreign aid and cash gifts. The most important of these is the trade in goods, also called merchandise trade. Trade surplus is the amount by which the value of merchandise exports exceeds the value of merchandise imports during a given period. Trade deficit is the amount by which the value of merchandise imports exceeds the value of merchandise exports during a given period. The financial account tracks the flow of financial capital by recording international transactions involving financial and real assets. Foreign exchange is foreign money people need to carry out international transactions. Typically, foreign exchange is made up of bank deposits in foreign currency. The exchange rate, or price of another currency, is determined by the interaction of all those who buy and sell foreign exchange. Flexible exchange rate is an exchange rate determined by the forces of supply and demand without government intervention. A fixed exchange rate is a rate fixed within a narrow range and maintained by central banks' ongoing purchases and sales of currencies. Developing countries, which have lower levels of GDP, industrial market countries, which have higher levels of GDP. Developing countries not only have lower GDP, they also usually have low rates of literacy, high unemployment rates, extensive unemployment, and rapid population growth. Industrial market countries have higher rates of literacy, lower unemployment, and slower population growth, and consist of economically advanced nations. Labor productivity depends on the quality of the labor and on the amount of capital, natural resources, and other resources that combine with labor to create production. In developing countries, less financial capital is available for investment, either human or physical capital. Import substitution is a development strategy that emphasizes replacing imports with domestic production. Import substitution was popular with those who supplied labor, capital, and other resources to protected domestic industries. Foreign aid is an international transfer of cash, goods, services, and other assistance to promote economic development. Bilateral aid is a development aid from one country to another. Multilateral aid, development aid from an international organization such as the World Bank that gets funds from many countries. To further Americans' foreign policy interest in expanding democracy and free markets, and to improve living standards in a developing world. The convergence theory is a theory predicting that the standard of living in economies around the world will grow more similar over time, with poorer countries gradually closing the gap with richer ones.